Hi, this is Maria Olson. You may know me from Trophy Heads or Starry Eyes and maybe Paranormal Activity 3. And I want to welcome you to Anthony T's Horror Show because it's an awesome show.
Hi, my name is Jessica Cameron, and you're listening to Anthony T's Horror Show.
Hey, fellow horror fans. This is Troy Escamilla, the director of Party Night and Mrs. Claus, and you are listening to Anthony T's Horror Show. Enjoy.
Welcome to another edition of Anthony T's Horror Show. I'm Anthony T. In this edition, I will be entering the theater of terror as I interview director Tom Ryan and producer Todd Staruch. And that will be next segment, ladies and gentlemen, because this is a very long interview. Around 50 minutes, pretty much. So, again, we will have a show where there's no format. But the purpose of Anthony T's Horror Show is the interview part. If I have like a 15-minute interview, I'd rather do a 50-minute interview than, say, do news, thoughts. Because I really think interviews are very good for the podcast, and I know you people love the interviews more than my daily rants, which to say will be coming back soon, because I still have to talk about a certain topic, which is the main topic of this podcast. He never seems to go away. You know who I'm talking about, but that's next episode. I'll be back with the filmmakers from the Theater of Terror. Can't help it. It's just such a great introduction. The Theater of Terror. But enough with that. Be back in a moment with the interview. Every day there's a family struggling with hospital bills to care for their sick child who is fighting an illness. There's a woman who is fighting breast cancer and is having trouble making ends meet while paying for their treatment. And there are burn victims that are going through treatments to heal their deep wounds. There is a charity in the horror community that helps these people. Scares That Care is an organization that helps families deal with the bills for their child. They help women get the treatment they need to fight breast cancer, and they help people who are dealing with severe burns get the help they need to heal. Scares That Care is a 100% volunteer organization and 501c3 nonprofit charity that is dedicated to helping these people in fighting real monsters. To find out more information or to donate to Scares That Care, you can go to www.scaresthatcare.org. Every donation helps Scares That Care fight real monsters.
Hey guys, this is Steve and Christina. I'm the founder, owner, creator, and host of Super Retro Throwback Reviews. Are you looking for the best movie reviews, music reviews, video game reviews, and Comic-Con coverage all around? Well then look no further. Definitely check out Super Retro Throwback Reviews on YouTube and our new audio podcast, the new and improved Super Retro Throwback Reviews audio files version 2.0 on the following media distributors: Podbean, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, iTunes, and Spotify.
Pass is over, John. Time for something new and improved.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
This is Carrie.
This is Billy.
This is Mr. Bo.
And we are from A Podcast from Beneath. You can catch us every Wednesday wherever you find your favorite podcasts.
back to life, seeking human victims.
Welcome back to Anthony T's Horror Show. I'm here with director Tom Ryan and producer Todd Staruch, as we're here to talk about their latest film, The Theater of Terror, or in Grindhouse tone, The Theater of Terror.
How you doing, Anthony? Thanks for having us on.
No problem. What made each of you want to get into the film business?
As far as what inspired me to start directing and get into the film business, I think I grew up in a really great era of films. Grew up on some great stuff from the 70s and the 80s, and as well as older films. Watched a lot of movies as a kid, all different types of genres, and I just loved the process. I once saw a behind the scenes video of the making of The Empire Strikes Back, and another one about Ray Harryhausen and the stop motion. That stuff really intrigued me a lot. The creativity behind that, just the process really was really interesting to me, and I love storytelling, and I love films, and the process intrigued me so much I kind of wanted to see if I could do it myself. And so that's kind of what got me into it. And with the advances in the digital era, where you don't need a cutting room in your home, and you're not cutting film anymore, where everything could be done with software on your home computer, editing wise. It's and cameras are more affordable and smaller and lighter and better now. It's just kind of been a perfect timing for somebody like me that actually doesn't have access to the larger film gear or the equipment that you'd use on a professional film set. So there's a lot of room now for independent filmmakers to kind of get into the action and get their work seen. So that kind of got me into it.
Todd?
I've been a lifelong film buff. I just love being drawn into a movie and just getting lost in it. And honestly, until later in life, I had no idea that independent filmmaking was even a thing. I just wasn't aware of the indie film scene. And then about 10 years ago, I just met some guys at a convention who had made a film, and I bought it, and I really liked it, and I got to know them. And I said, well, how do I get involved with this? And they said, well, we've got a movie coming up. Do you want to be a zombie in our movie? And I'm like, yeah. So they did that, and I did all the makeup and everything, and I got to play make believe on set. And then that's it. I was just hooked, and I said, okay, I just want to do this. I want to be involved. It's yes, it's a lot of work and a lot of effort, but it's so much fun and it's so rewarding. And now I just have a blast doing it. I get to work with a lot of talented and creative people. And it's just the most fun thing that I get to do.
Tom, one of the things that I really liked about The Theater of Terror was in that opening scene where you talk about the state of film itself. What made you want to express your views on it in this film?
It's really such a real issue for filmmakers, even on a larger scale. For Hollywood, it's an issue. It's becoming really hard to kind of read what direction films are going in. People, especially the younger generations, are more and more conditioned to watch television and movies on their phone, which is really baffling to me, only because of just the spectacle it was to go to a theater and they'd have this giant screen where you get to watch an amazing movie, and that to me is such a draw, and you're sharing it with a room of maybe another 400 or 500 people, depending on the size of the theater you went to. And so to me, it's like that's changing, and it's such a reality. We see it even on the indie level. Thank goodness it hasn't been on too large of a scale, but when we attend conventions and we'll sell our DVDs or Blu-rays, there is a handful of people that no longer own a DVD player or own a Blu-ray player. And of course, we'll chalk up some to maybe they didn't want to buy the movie, and that's what they said, and that's we could chalk a few up to that. but there were a few people that actually bought a DVD and said, I don't own a DVD player, but I'll pick one up. And, because we talked about it, I mean, they're so ridiculously inexpensive now. But the reality is that a lot of people don't even own them anymore. And so it's just kind of a strange thing that's happening. I'm not sure, if ultimately people are going to stop going to the movies because we're all going to have these giant screens at home, these lightweight, flat screen, high definition televisions where we can enjoy movies. But I really felt like it was something that was on my mind and something that I kind of experienced when I see how many people actually don't see movies in the theater anymore. They're going to Redbox or even watching them at home. And so I just kind of thought it really fit what we were trying to where we were trying to go at the theater, that it's kind of this outdated idea. And the only thing keeping the theater alive is basically the people that attend it. And that's true in reality as it was in the movie.
Tell everyone about your film, The Theater of Terror, which was recently released nationwide from Bayview Entertainment.
Yeah, Bayview, we signed a distribution deal with Bayview. It was just released on February 25th. You can get it on Amazon. I believe you can order it through Barnes & Nobles and Target, other large outlets like that. We're extremely happy about it. We did the convention tour, and we personally met with a lot of fans, a lot of horror fans, a lot of people in the independent film community. But now we've turned it over to Bayview for distribution. We're very happy with the way they've treated it and the way they're promoting it. And yeah, we're really excited. What I'd like to ask is if anybody would look us up on Amazon, that you could order the DVD there, but a rating would be great, or a review if you've seen our film. We really appreciate if you could review it. Give it an honest review, of course. I'm not asking everybody to give us a 5-star rating and an amazing review, but just share your thoughts on the film and give us a rating. And just to create a little bit of activity on the page, it helps to raise our profile and just helps us to get our product on the eyes of some more film fans.
How did the concept of the Theater of Terror come about?
Todd, you want to kick this one around a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Well, Tom came to me one day and said, hey, look, thinking for my next project, I'm thinking of doing an anthology. How do you feel about that? And do you want to be involved? And I said, well, you said the magic word. You said anthology. I've just been a huge fan, mainly because the film that sparked my love of horror in general is a movie called Dr. Terror's House of Horrors. And it's an anthology about 5 strangers on a train. And Peter Cushing plays a fortune teller who tells their individual fortunes and tells their futures. And each one is a little vignette. And I just love that kind of a formula because you get 5 kind of very different stories, but all linked together in some way. And when Tom said he had that kind of a concept in mind, and he showed me the individual scripts that he had written, I said, yeah, let's do it. And the idea is, we wanted to appeal to more than just a hardcore horror fan. And Tom will back me up on this. We sit at conventions and people are like, oh, I'm not really into horror. And I'm like, well, then this is the movie for you because there's something for everybody. We have a sci-fi entry, a dark drama, like kind of a creature feature. And then, something that's a little more horror. So, it just harkens back to those days of the Twilight Zone and Creepshow. And, it offers a little bit, for everybody. And we just wanted to appeal to that broader audience. And I think we achieved that goal.
I noticed each film when I was seeing it, I had the thought that each of them could operate as a separate short film. Were any of these films originally a short film?
Yeah, they're all self-contained stories, and when we were building the anthology, we launched an Indiegogo campaign to raise funds for it. And our intention, not knowing whether or not the campaign would be successful, was to at least take whatever funding we were able to raise and complete as many of the stories as possible. So, although the completion of the anthology was not something that was basically decided or at least something that became possible until we had finished 3 of the films, 3 of the short stories. and then we were able to raise more funding to complete the anthology.
One of the things do you have anything else to say?
No. No, I was just going to say that they are all self-contained films, but the wraparound story works in a way that doesn't step on those films, and the films doesn't step on the wraparound story either. So I kind of like the way that we sewed those together where, we initially, upon completion of each short film, actually submitted them to film festivals separately. And then when the anthology was complete, then we also submitted it as a feature to some film festivals. So it was definitely something that was, it was kind of a flexible project in that sense where we wanted to make sure that we would be able to at least complete some of these stories and that none of them depended on the others being completed in order to exist.
One of the film settings that I really liked in the film was the theater itself, as it had a very old school theater feel to it. What was it like finding the location, and tell everyone about the theater where the wraparound segment was shot?
It's the landmark Lowe's Jersey in Jersey City, New Jersey. It's on Journal Square. I lived 5 blocks from that theater growing up in Jersey City. I saw tons of classic movies there, everything from Raiders of the Lost Ark to Rocky, or maybe not Rocky, but maybe Rocky 2. But I've seen a ton of classic films there, grew up there. It was a beautiful place. Right now it does have landmark status. The Friends of Lowe's maintains that theater. They're a nonprofit organization. When I completed my first feature film, Faces, I wanted it to premiere in Jersey City, and I really wanted it to premiere at that theater. I know that they still held functions, like they'll host weddings there. They'll host a Universal Horror Night where they'll show Frankenstein and Dracula or Phantom of the Opera, perhaps. And so they'll show classic films once in a while. So I knew that they were still operational, and I reached out to them about premiering my film Faces there. They were very accommodating, and they really treated me very well, and I developed a friendship with that organization. And so when we were shooting the Theater of Terror and we were considering what the wraparound story was going to be, we thought that the Theater of Terror was a great name for the film and for the concept, and then what better way to have these films shown but in an old film movie palace. And so I reached out to them and I told them that we'd like to shoot there. And after some negotiations, we were able to arrange it. And just from what you saw in the movie, the place it's just beautiful. It's a magnificent. The architecture is magnificent. It's a wonderful location. And it's great when you're shooting there because it's really, it's just got this energy to it that's wonderful. And there's no other place that I'd rather have hold our premieres or even shoot. I really believe that it's like the embodiment of the classic theater, that a lot of us remember from when we were kids. There was a lot more of those places before the multiplexes were built. And, it was a real honor to shoot there, and hopefully we'll be returning there for the sequel.
Another thing that I really liked about this film was your performance, Tom, as the man behind the Theater of Terror. What made you decide that you wanted to play the character that pulls all the strings?
Narcissism.
Well, yeah, that's because I am the guy that pulls all the strings. It was, it kind of had a little to do with that. It was kind of like, who better? In the beginning, the concept of who that character was going to be a little bit different. And I'm really happy that we toned it down to where he's just kind of this guy that works in a projector room. It was going to be something a little bit more, Carnival Barker style. And, we kind of shied away from that when it all kind of started falling into place, and I just thought that wouldn't really work for what we were trying to get to, which was really just kind of a humble, kind of just a weird, is he malevolent or is he, or not, and we just kind of, settled on that character. I did want to act in the anthology to some extent. I do a lot more directing than I do acting these days, and but it's still, for me, it's still an indie film, and it's still fun to be in your own film. I've done a lot of acting and other stuff. So it's not exactly like I'm just kind of trying to inject myself into a film and sacrifice the acting aspect of it. I certainly hope I didn't do that with that character. I would hope that people thought I did a pretty good job. And so I just kind of felt connected to him because, again, it's a lot of what's in the dialogue is really coming from the way that I feel about film now and the movies and going to the movies and you know, what it takes to sustain a place like that and what it needs to thrive. And so, you know, it just kind of felt like, you know, if the shoe fits, I should play the part. And so that was, but it was a lot of fun for me, and I did enjoy that role a lot.
Yeah, I really thought your performance really held the glue together between each of the films, as it really brings a level of charisma that keeps you invested in this deranged story and everything.
Cool. Cool. Excellent.
Now, what was the casting process like for each of the films?
We, over the years, you know, Tom and I, between, you know, all of our different endeavors and projects, we just meet a lot of people over the years. So we had people in mind who we thought would be good for each of the roles. And then, you know, we just reached out to them to check availability or whatever. And then the casting process is always interesting, you know, because things happen along the way, who becomes unavailable, you know, and sometimes, unfortunately, you decide, maybe this wasn't quite the right person for this role, and we have to recast. But that's one of the, for me anyway, I don't want to speak for Tom, but for me, one of the joys of doing this is just getting to meet so many different people. So that way, when you do have a project that comes up, it becomes a little bit easier because you already have people in mind. And again, I'll let Tom follow up on this, but there were a couple of characters in the various shorts where we had very specific people in mind for the role. And then we were very happy that we were able to secure those people. Tom, I'll let you follow up on that a little bit.
Yeah, no, it's and it's actually kind of part of the process, even from the writing stage. There's times when I'm, you know, inventing some character or kind of fleshing them out in a story, and it helps me to put a face to the character. And so there's times when I do kind of reference this catalog in my head of actors that I've met and actresses, and I kind of match them up with these characters I've created, and not necessarily cementing that person in the role, but I think that there's this wishful thinking that I really hope I could get this person. And so for, you know, a good majority of some of the main actors in the Theater of Terror, they were people that we kind of had our eye on from the very beginning. And then surprisingly, like Todd said, there were 3 major roles in 3 of the shorts that lead roles that were recast somewhere in the pre-production stage, but late in the pre-production stage, which almost made me a little bit nervous about how those actors would turn out in the roles. Not because I didn't feel secure in their talents, but just kind of the fact that it wasn't what I had been envisioning for this entire production period. So yeah, there's challenges to it, but a lot of these people are just people that you meet through the independent community, film festivals, conventions. Always carry your business card. It's great to stay in touch. And some of the actors in particular, 2 in particular, I really was happy to work with this time around were Timothy O'Hearn and Patrick Boyer, both from Endangered. Both of them I had met back in 2012 or early 2013, and really got along well with the guys. And they told me that they were in the business and that we'd love to work together. And we stayed in touch all these years. And then finally in 2018, I think, is when we shot the films that they were in. I was able to cast them and reach out to them, and we all had a good laugh over it, where I said, see, I told you we were going to work together someday, and we finally got the opportunity. So, yeah, sometimes it takes a while, but I like to cast people that fit the parts and that are going to do justice to a character. I'm not just trying to do any favors. I know a lot of actors, and a lot of them are good friends, but I'm not just going to throw them into any part. I really want to give them something that they're going to shine in and they're going to own, and that we could really sell to the audience. So yeah, it's an interesting process.
What was the most difficult segment to cast?
Oh, that's an interesting question.
Huh. I don't know.
I don't know if I could really answer that because a lot of these actors were very excited when I sent them the script and wanted to be a part of it. And again, like we had already kind of formed this idea of who our main cast members were going to be for the shorts. It might have been endangered because we have the 3 activists and there were a lot of candidates for those roles. And they were people that I reached out to and circumstances changed. There were people that I'd reached out to and they were on board and then they weren't. And so there was kind of that one I guess might have been the most challenging because we had so many options for that in the beginning, or at least people that I'd reached out to. But overall, I think it was fairly easy casting because I think the actors thought we had really strong stories and good scripts, and the actors that we reached out to were people that are active in the independent scene, and so they're kind of this is what they like to get their dig their teeth into as a role like this. So it was relatively easy, I think.
After watching this film for like maybe a second time, I started to realize there are Easter eggs hidden in this film. What made you came up with the idea to include Easter eggs for other stories in this film?
I think that was a underlying desire to do that, on some level with the shorts, to loosely tie them together in case we could not complete the entire anthology and have a wraparound. At least personally, we would know that these films kind of referenced each other or in the same world. It's funny that you bring that up. On the Blu-ray version of the film, we have a section that just shows every single Easter egg in all the shorts, and it was a lot of fun putting those together. And a lot of it are nods to things that inspired certain films that we did in the anthology. So whatever inspired that film, we might have placed a few nods to that in the film. That's kind of the fun of filmmaking. I don't think it's something that every shoot we were determined to get those things in there. But they were things that were preconceived and kind of said, hey, this would work cool. This could be a great opportunity to use this. So we laid them out. And it's just, I love Easter eggs in films. I know Todd loves Easter eggs.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's kind of a fun thing for us to throw those in there and reference them when we talk to film fans because they really enjoy that.
Definitely.
Now, in the story of The Gift, the story focuses on the dangers of addiction. What made you want to focus that thing in The Gift?
Well, I'd have to remember my thought process back when I was writing it. But I am almost sure that it was my solution to pulling the woman away from her family and what would drive a family apart. And obviously, addiction is probably one of the first driving forces of that in this country and around the world, driving families apart. And it was. I've had friends with addiction issues, close friends, family members that have had addiction issues, have died from addiction issues. And it's something. I don't want to say it's something I'm closely familiar with it, but in a sense where it's. I don't want to say it's something that I had to tell a story about. It was just kind of something that seemed like the natural progression of the character. We wanted to bring her to a really bad place in her life that separated her from her family, and that was a very realistic direction to go towards, I think.
How did the idea for the story come about?
Well, when I was talking to the production team, it's Todd and Russell Hackett and Diane Hackett, and we were kind of bouncing around stories or at least ideas of concepts that we wanted to explore. Doing an anthology frees us up to dive into a lot of different subject matter, and I started thinking about horror films that I like and I enjoy, and what are some things that I'd like to touch on. And so I know there's a lot of doll movies out, like Annabelle and
The Boy.
the boy and things of that nature. And for me, when I was young, the doll that always freaked me out was the clown in Poltergeist, and it freaked out a lot of people back then. And so but I love that stuff, and I always wanted to kind of do a movie with that concept. Now, The Gift, without completely giving away the plot, is not exactly along those lines. We don't use the doll to the extent or in the same vein that those films use, but just the concept of the doll and how the woman and the doll are kind of connected. For me, that was just really fun subject matter to explore, as was aliens and giant slimy insects and werewolves. That's like some of the best material from some of the best horror movies I've ever seen contained those ingredients. And so we really wanted to kind of go after, those things. Look, I mean, everybody kind of does vampires and zombies, right? And we just kind of wanted to get into dip our hands into the other realms of strange existences and worlds that we could kind of touch in, and the doll was one of them, as was these other concepts. So, and Todd, when we had these production meetings, Todd could tell you that we were excited about that, and the variety in the creatures and the dark realm that we were going to explore.
In the Bookworm, I noticed the segment takes place almost entirely in an actual library. What was it like finding the location for the library, and how hard was it shooting at that location?
Let me jump in here real quick, Tom, because I always like to kid. It kills me to give Tom credit for anything, but one thing Tom is excellent at is going out and doing the legwork to find these locations. And when he first sent me pictures of that, to the Glen Ridge Public Library in Glen Ridge, New Jersey, and I was like, oh my God, how did you find that place? Because it's, a library with actual wooden shelves and big old oak furniture and paintings and everything. And it was fantastic. And the people who run the library were so into it. They loved having us there. And they were full participants. They just loved the fact that we were shooting there. And for our premiere of the Bookworm, they went all out. They made like paper pictures of worms and hung them from the ceiling, and they had food and like all this worm themed stuff everywhere. I was like, wow, if all of our locations were this hospitable, it would be amazing. They were just so into the whole idea that we were shooting a movie there. They couldn't get over it.
What were some of the challenges shooting there during normal business hours at the library?
Tom, you want to comment on that?
Yeah, it was very challenging. We basically, so in our favor, it's a library, so everyone has to be quiet anyway. And so we'd get our actors' dialogue in, and it's basically quiet. But we literally had to shoot around people shopping for books, and now luckily for us, the library wasn't exactly packed. It wasn't a Saturday morning or afternoon, and the families weren't out. But we did have to deal with the normal customer traffic that was coming in there. But like Todd said, the library was very accommodating to us, and the people that kind of came in and saw we were working on a film were very interested in what we were doing, but they were also very respectful and didn't put themselves in the way. But it just makes for a great story afterwards when you tell people, you see that scene? Right? We cut it right here because a little girl walks in front of the camera in this scene, and it's true. There were a few scenes that we used in the film that are really the best takes of the film, but we had to kind of trim and edit out these little things where you'd see somebody kind of peek around the corner and look down the aisle where we were shooting, and you're like, oh. So yeah, that was it was very interesting, but it was an experience I'll never forget.
Yeah.
What was it like editing that short segment?
Well, I mean, it's like editing anything else. It's always a challenge. But if you get the right coverage, editing can be very easy. And I think we got a lot of great coverage on that film. Mark Boutros was our director of photography on that. And, there's so much. I mean, it's tough leaving anything on the cutting room floor that we shot in that library because it's just such a beautiful spot. But, we have to trim the amount of, the time down. We want to keep the short tight, and we want it to flow and want the story to flow. So unfortunately, those things are necessary. But no more difficult than editing any other film.
Another really good story in this film is Abducted. One of the things I really liked about that segment was Russ Hackett's performance. How did you guys become involved with Russ Hackett?
So we met Russ through the festival, right, Todd? Is that correct? Through the film festival circuit, through Grindhouse, or?
Yeah, well, I met Russ way back in the day. We started out going to our friend and fellow filmmaker Rob Dimension ran something called the New Jersey, Pennsylvania Horror Club, where we'd all get together to watch horror films in a comic book shop. And this was like almost 7 or 8 years ago. And that's when I first met Russ. And then, yeah, we all just became friends through the film festival circuit.
Yeah. And then Russ saw my feature film Faces, and he really enjoyed it. And he reached out to me with a script that him and a writer by the name of Jerry Janda had collaborated on called Wrapped. And he asked me if I would direct that for him. And I said I would. And then I kind of saw that Russ didn't have that much experience on the production end of things. And so we kind of made it into a theater of terror production where I helped him to produce it. And we worked together on that. And Russ was also the lead in that. And kind of a similar character to Ned, actually, from Abducted. Yeah, we shot that, and that was in Jefferson Township, New Jersey. That was at Camp Jefferson, which is another great location. And after that, Russ sent an idea to me. He sent me a short story. I think it was about a page and a half or 2 pages, perhaps. And it was called The Bookworm. And it was about a guy that buys this warehouse, and he goes into a warehouse full of books, and slime proceeds to drop onto his body and cover him in this cocoon-like substance, and it burns his skin. And so it was a little bit different than what you actually saw on the screen, but he sent that to me and said he was thinking about doing a feature. And I told him that I liked the story, but it kind of felt more like a short film. And so I wrote a screenplay for it and sent it to him, and we threw a bunch of new characters in there. That's such as the family and the sister and Lara and Mr. Simmons, and Russ liked where that was going. And then I said, if we're going to do a short film, why don't we do a few short films, and why don't we do an anthology? And that's kind of how that evolved as the lead into the entire anthology. But yeah, that's how we knew Russ, and started working with him, and that was his contribution, a big contribution to the bookworm.
How did the production team come up with the lighting effects for the spaceship in that segment?
That is the number one question that we get about that movie, is how did you do the lights? So, Tom, we were talking about it, and we had I don't want to give too much away, but we had a thought of how we were going to do the lights manually and have a bunch of people out in the woods with individual lights. My dad, Kenny, does sound and lighting for a bunch of local bands here in New Jersey. So and he has a trailer full of various equipment. And I talked to him about it, and within a day, he said, come over to the house, I want to show you something. And he had come up with this rig of a platform with theater lights evenly spaced out over it that are controlled via this analog computer that allows you to control the sequencing of the lights. And he hooked this up, and then we went and did a demo over at Tom's house with Tom and my dad and Lou Libetz, the cinematographer on that segment. And we all were just blown away by what my dad had come up with. And then implementing it out in the middle of the woods in November was definitely a challenge. But I think it paid off, because that really is one, if not the number one question, it's definitely up there. Whenever we screen the film, that's the number one thing that people ask is, how the heck did you do those lights?
Yeah, because that really looked very professional. And I like the fact that it did, given the tiny budget you had for that film.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I give all the credit in the world to my dad, for coming up with the process and the idea of how to do it. And all I did was help him carry the equipment back out into the woods. He was the mastermind behind it.
How did the idea of Endangered come about?
Well, Endangered was that was the werewolf film that I've been dying to make for many years. And, I grew up loving films like The Howling and Wolfen and American Werewolf in London and Silver Bullet. And I just have been dying to explore werewolves and werewolf stories. Patrick Boyer was our alien in Abducted, and he was also our werewolf in Endangered. And I told Patrick that I'd been working on a werewolf story, and he had built a Krampus outfit. Now, Pat is about 6'7", and he had built this big Krampus outfit I saw pictures of. And when we started thinking about how we're going to make Endangered, we knew one of our biggest obstacles was going to be creating unbelievable costume. The werewolves that I really like are the howling werewolves, the tall, intimidating, long ears, long snout. And I love that look for a werewolf. Don't really like walking on all fours, more of a canine werewolf. I really like the half man, half wolf looking creature, and we wanted to do that. And I talked to Patrick about it, and we realized he's got this Krampus outfit that's just a big fur outfit that looks like a wolf's body. And we just had to figure out what to do with the mask. Well, when I talked to Patrick about it, he had been building a werewolf mask that he had thoughts about developing for a while. It was just a perfect marriage of timing and ideas, and we knew that was going to make it a reality. That was the most important thing. I had also built some canine legs that unfortunately were not set worthy. They were good in practice on a flat surface, but once we got into the woods, unfortunately they were not functioning on uneven ground the way that we had intended. But we did get the costume, and we did get Pat out there, all 6'7" of them, which was great. And it was just years of wanting to do a werewolf film. I love werewolf films. I love the concept of a werewolf. And I think that when we did Endangered, I just got to have so much fun with so many of those things that I love about wolves. From their just intimidation factor to them. It's basically like a grizzly bear sized wolf, and it's just so much fun on set, helping the actor around and setting up those scenes, and just the family out in the woods, Alan Rowe Kelly, Timothy O'Hearn, Tommy McGuckin. It's just for us, it was a real homage to B films, B movies, and just such a great and exciting time on set. And another tough time on set, all night in the dark in the woods. That was a tough one to shoot, but every minute of it was great because everybody had such a great energy, especially Pat, who was wearing that heavy costume for hours and hours and was able to accommodate us getting all the shots that we needed for the film.
Now, what was it like working with all the gore effects with that segment, as this is pretty much the most bloody segment out of the 4 segments in the film?
Yeah, well, that's Michael Scardillo handled our special effects on that, and Mike is just an awesome effects artist. I've worked with him on other films as well. We worked with him on Faces. He's the creator of the worms in the bookworm. He manufactured the doll in The Gift. So I love working with Mike. We think alike. We communicate well. And Mike is always determined to get just the right look. And he had built this great little, I guess, like a prop stomach, where the scene is the werewolf is ripping the entrails and the guts out of one of the hunters. And, Mike came up with the whole rig himself. He built it. I told him what I wanted, and that's what's great about Mike. I told him what I wanted to see, and he built something that would translate that vision onto the screen and make it look realistic. And it's a ton of fun. I love, even though our films are a little bit more, I guess, cerebral or story-driven and a little bit less gory and violent, we're a little bit more Twilight Zone than we are, like, Tales from the Crypt. We're a little bit more, leaning towards that, the human condition, character study type thing. But with that said, when we get to do a film like Endangered, like, we love getting our hands dirty. We love getting everything bloody. We couldn't get enough of it. Mike can't get enough of it. He brings with him several buckets of blood, and he's ready to make more on set. So, it's fun. I mean, there's nothing like, there's nothing like letting loose a little bit like that. The only thing I regret is that we can't shoot some of those scenes more, because once you're on a tight budget and you're getting blood on everybody, it's not easy to just bring out a second wardrobe and then do the scene all over again. So you basically get one or two shots to get some of these gore scenes in, and then you gotta move on, because there's no turning back after that. But yeah, lots of fun.
A question for both of you. Which was the easiest of the 4 main segments to make, and which one was the most difficult to make?
They all had their own challenges. This is a great question. I would say, so I'll start. I can only obviously speak for myself. I think the most challenging one, or the most difficult, was probably Abducted, just because to achieve the effect that we wanted. When I say we were filming in the middle of the woods, we were filming in the middle of the woods. And it was cold and dark and miserable. And, it's almost pitch black, and we're tripping over branches and whatnot, and we're freezing. And it got to a point where I was like, Tom, please, yell cut, please. Let's wrap this up. I would say maybe the easiest one was wow, this is a really good question. I'm going to have to go with The Bookworm, for no other reason than it's mostly shot indoors. There's a lot of dialogue scenes that were not effects heavy or difficult to shoot until we get obviously to the transformation at the end. And even then, it's only our actor, Scott Gorbach, that really got tortured. And he was such a good sport, sitting in that seat and getting covered with slime and goo. But they all had their challenges. They all were fun. But man, shooting in the woods in the middle of the night in the middle of November, not fun.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with Todd's reasoning. I would disagree on the easiest. I would say that The Gift was probably easiest. The worst part about shooting The Gift was that it really was, as you can see in the film, it was pouring rain throughout the weekend that we were shooting, and that really made it just difficult going in and out of locations and carrying gear and stuff. It was just a real pain. Everybody's boots were getting wet. Everybody's hair was getting wet. Everybody's, and it was really, that was a hassle. But save for the weather, the shoot itself was really just mostly dialogue scenes and very little effects, very minor special effects. Just the doll and really just posing the doll is all we had to do. So I think as far as a kind of an effort, the toughest part was just moving gear around in the rain, and as opposed to The Bookworm, where I think, what made it a little bit tougher for me in The Bookworm was when you're working in the library and it's midnight and you kind of have these people keeping the place, keeping the door unlocked for you. There's always a little bit of a sense of pressure on you to get stuff done quickly and efficiently. Whereas in The Gift, we weren't pressed for time. Then again, we were pressed for time in the antique store, so now I have all these other stories racing around in my head, so I'm not going to dive into. But the hardest one, I think I have to agree with Todd, was probably Abducted, and because we also shot Endangered in the Woods as well, but the cabin was our staging area, and we were shooting no more than, 30 to 40 feet away from the cabin at any given time, so we always had a bathroom and stuff to run to. With Abducted, we were in the middle of the woods. There was a house that was probably 100 yards away from where we were shooting that we could go to, but just traversing that area in the woods and the branches and the truck tires that someone had rolled out into the middle of the wood and left there, or the rocks or the creek that you'd step in and now suddenly your foot is submerged in water and your sock is wet. That kind of stuff made it very difficult. And then carrying out the lighting equipment for the UFO scene. There was a lot of gear. There was a lot of extension cords, lights, ladders, planks, a lot of heavy gear. And that was not easy. So that was probably, I agree with Todd, it was probably the most difficult of the films.
What are some of the features on the retail version of Theater of Terror?
Okay, so the DVD that Bayview has just released is just the film itself, the Theater of Terror. The special features are only available on the Blu-ray. You could pick up through theaterofterror.net. The Blu-ray comes with the entire feature film. On the menu, you could select each of the short films separately and watch them on their own. We have an hour of cast and crew commentary, the entire story behind the making of the film, each short, casting, location scouting, special effects secrets are revealed, how we did them, how they were designed, how they were built, and how they worked. And then we have a great the Easter egg section on it, which will just reveal to you all the little inspirations that we dropped all over all the shorts, and that's probably about a good half hour worth of Easter eggs and little known facts about the film. So that can be found on the Blu-ray, and it's really worth the purchase because you get to see the film in its best resolution, and the behind the scenes stuff is really for people that love independent film. I really try to tell them it's really a must-see thing because it's a must-see segment because we really talk about building this film from the ground up, and it's just it'd just be a great educational piece for anybody that's thinking about getting into making independent films.
Now, you guys mentioned earlier that this is going to be a sequel to the Theater of Terror. Tell everyone about that, if you can.
Todd, you want to introduce?
Sure. We have already begun filming on the return to the Theater of Terror. We had, Tom, what was it, about maybe a week and a half ago, we had our first day of shooting.
Yep.
And in about a week, we have our second day of shooting on our first segment called Soothsayer, which is a pretty cool little time travel story. Then we have some other segments coming up that are going to be pretty neat. We have another segment that is focuses on sort of a Native American shaman kind of a curse, and this is one that I'm proud to have written the original story and then co-wrote the screenplay with Tom. We have another sci-fi story coming up that involves a robot. And then finally, we're delving into the paranormal with a pretty cool and creepy little story called Haunted. So I think we have another interesting and diverse selection of short films coming up this time. I think everyone who enjoyed the first film will be really pleased with this one. Tom, any?
Yeah, no, I mean, you basically set it up great. Just to follow up on what Todd said, we've begun principal photography on Soothsayer, and Soothsayer basically deals with a scientist who discovers the secret of time travel, and he demonstrates this device for an old colleague. and he catches a horrifying glimpse of what the future holds and tries to prevent it. And that's our synopsis for the film. Soothsayer is going to be a really great nod to some of our favorite Universal monster movies. It will be in black and white. It is 100% inspired, and we are designing this film to very much remind people of what those old movies used to be like. We're really looking forward to that. We've shot that one in Kipps Castle, and we'll be shooting in Bluefield College as well. A couple of great locations, and it's something that we really focus on, is having top-notch locations to tell these stories. I'll give you the synopsis of Robot. Young Jack lives in an abusive home. One night he witnesses what appears to be a meteorite landing in the nearby woods and discovers a small damaged robot at the crash site. Fascinated by his find, he brings it home as a keepsake. But this robot is sentient and rapidly becomes aware of the dire circumstances surrounding his rescuer. That one is going to be a lot of fun. That's our sci-fi segment. We're really excited about this one because we had so much fun doing Abducted and doing that sci-fi story, and I really feel like this is going to be a strong follow-up to that. As Todd mentioned, Abducted is also kind of one of the favorite segments for a lot of people that watch the anthology, and so there's a certain expectation I think that I have of ourselves, where I really want to keep that bar high for our sci-fi segment, and I think the Robot story is going to really do that. As Todd mentioned, he co-wrote and penned the original story for Splinter, which is about a man named Scott Wills. While renovating his recently inherited home, Scott Wills steps on a small splinter. The wound only continues to get worse as he slowly learns the history of the town, its people, and a terrible family legacy. This one is I'm really looking forward to this story. When Todd first sent it to me to read, I really enjoyed the concept. I liked exactly the elements that he was touching on, and we feel that the special effects for this film are going to be really incredible visually, and it's going to be, I'm telling you, it's going to, this happened with us when we made the original anthology. It's just going to be this great achievement, I think, completing Splinter. Going into it, I'm going to be nervous as hell because there's just the way you want to build this film. We got some high hopes and high expectations for the way it's going to look and feel. But I know there's going to come that day when it's behind us, and I'm really going to be excited about the final product. So I really look forward to that entry in the new anthology. And then finally, Haunted, our paranormal story, follows Carl Gab, and he's a less than professional paranormal investigator who receives a call for help from a widow in distress. Ever since her late husband's passing, she and her daughter have been harassed by a poltergeist. McGavin takes the job, but what he discovers turns out to be much more than he bargained for. This is another interesting story, and very much, I think, in the vein of our theater of terror kind of brand, and like just the kind of way that we tell a compelling story, but it's not always exactly what you expect. And Haunted, I've been wanting to do a ghost story. This is again another example of an anthology that we're doing for the passion of the horror genre and all the subgenres that make it up, whether you're talking about ghosts or you're talking about curses or you're talking about science fiction, or you're talking about time travel. It's all great stuff that we've always wanted to explore and touch on, and I think Return to the Theater of Terror is going to continue the legacy that we started with the Theater of Terror, and I honestly just think it's only going to get better.
Now, will you be doing more Theater of Terror films besides Return to Theater of Terror?
So I think that really largely depends on what our audience wants. We're going to very soon we're going to be launching an Indiegogo campaign to raise funds for Return to the Theater of Terror. It's not inexpensive making these movies. We do pride ourselves on turning around a high level of production value with a low budget, but in the same sense, we are employing a lot of actors and sound engineers, cinematographers, special effects artists, and paying for food and gas and all that stuff, and all that money's got to come from somewhere. So we're hoping that the fans will want to see another anthology film. They'll help us fund this one. And then once this one's out, I really have a lot of confidence that it's going to be well received because, like I said, we're kind of building on that idea from the first anthology. And if this one is well received, I really don't see a reason that we would stop it because I think we do have a lot of different stories to tell. And getting movies made takes a long time. With the approach and the process that we're using for these anthologies, we're able to get films shot relatively quickly and turned around relatively quickly. And it's really important when you're keeping your audience interested and you want to let them know that you're still around, you're still making films, you're still putting out product for them. And you get those loyal fans and those loyal followers, and they appreciate that.
When can we expect the Indiegogo campaign to go live?
That's a great question. I've been procrastinating a little bit on that because I've had a heavy focus on this first short, Soothsayer, that we started. But I think it will probably go live shortly after we wrap on Soothsayer, hopefully within the next couple of weeks. And what I like to do is we will be using footage and stills from Soothsayer to show the fans that we have already begun and using our own money, and we've already begun the process and showing them exactly the amount and the level of dedication we have to this project and the level of energy we're pouring into it. Just not so much of a spoiler, but we'll be revealing our time machine that we built for our first short film, Soothsayer, in the Indiegogo campaign. And I think people will see what we're investing in ourselves and in this next anthology.
Now, where can they find the Theater of Terror and each of you on social media?
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Todd. I'll just really quickly, theaterofterror.net. Theater, of course, is spelled Theatre. You could find us on Facebook as Theater of Terror. And you can find us on Instagram as Theater Terror. You could find us on Twitter as Theater Terror. And go ahead, Todd. I think you got a few websites.
Yeah, I'm a social media whore, so you can. My website is horrornerd.net, and you can also find me on Facebook as the Horror Nerd, Instagram as the Horror Nerd. And you check out my YouTube channel as the Horror Nerd. So I'm pretty much everywhere, and and I'm also, I'm also happy to be, helping out, as part of Theater of Terror with this new production. I'm very happy that Tom asked me to come back and help out with this one. The last one was a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to getting my hands dirty in about a week on the next shooting day.
I want to thank you, Tom and Todd, for coming on to my podcast. I hope each of you have a good day.
Thank you very much for having us.
You're welcome.
All right, so long.
So long.
Besides Anthony T's Horror Show, you can also listen to these other fine podcasts on the Doc Discussions Network. Doc Discussions, hosted by Philip Perrone and Michael Darwin. You Know Nothing, Jon Snow, a Game of Thrones podcast. Bullets, Brothels, and Bots, a Westworld podcast. Halloween Boutique, Psychotronic Reviews. And Searching for American Gods. You can find Doc Discussions on the web at www.docdiscussions.com. And Doc Discussions is also available on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and Spotify. For the latest news and information on Anthony T's Horror Show, you can check out Anthony T's Horror Show on these social media platforms at Anthony T's Horror Show on Facebook, Instagram, and the Slasher app, at Anthony T's Horror on Twitter. Anthony T's Horror Show can be found on YouTube as well at youtube.com/Anthony Thurber. You can find Dark Discussions on the web at www.darkdiscussions.com, and you can find Anthony T's Horror Show on the web at anthonytshorrorshow.blogspot.com. Welcome back. I want to thank director Tom Ryan and producer Todd Staruch for coming on to the program. It was great chatting about this film, and I really highly recommend you go over to theaterofterror.net and pick up the Blu-ray of this film. This film is very good, and it's definitely worth your time and your money, as this is one of the better anthology horror films to come out in the last couple of years. So definitely pick up The Theater of Terror at theaterofterror.net, or you can just get the regular edition on DVD, courtesy of Bayview Entertainment, which is available at all online retailers. Now, before I go, I want to talk about a new thing that I'm doing this year regarding to the best of 2020. Every year is always a pain to try to come up with 10 films. It's tough trying to come out with a list every year. You have your list figured out, then you want to rechange it and everything. I had a couple of films that were like at the bottom but moved up at my final look at my list. So this year I'm going to try something different. I recently started a Letterboxd account. You can find the link on Anthony T's Horror Show on Facebook. But I'm going to be rating each of these horror films. And this is how I'm going to kind of control my top 10 list of 2020. Please note, it's an unofficial list, because you may have some festival films that get on there at the end, and the site does not have the film listed. So, starting at the end of March, say beginning of April, on Anthony T's Horror Show on Facebook, I will give you the unofficial top 10 horror films of 2020. This month will probably have films that will not be on the top 10 list at the end of the year. I can guarantee you that much. But I'm also going to do another list midway through the month. And it's going to be like the overall list, where every month I'll have my top 10 films of the year, which is the official list. They'll be on Facebook only, and so it'll be a note. And I may also put that up on the official website as well at anthonytshorrorshow.blogspot.com, which I still have to update. But that's also another good idea that I might do as well for the official list. Now, you can follow me on Letterboxd at letterboxd.com/athurber, THURBER. There you will see the best of 2020 as is updated by the films I see. Also on that account, I will have a overall list of the best films of 2020 period. And this list will include pretty much everything. Dramas, comedies, superhero films, all that stuff. So definitely check it out. I will post links to it on the social media pages, but it's a way to keep track to see which films I like the most. And I really like this format a lot, and I can't wait to frequently post films from 2020 that I've seen on this site. With that, I want to thank you for listening to this podcast. Have a good day and support indie horror.